Michael van Gerwen winning the Belgian Darts Open, beating Luke Humphries 8-6 in Sunday night's final, when it was a first Euro Tour title of the year for MVG, and the title was moved him above Peter Wright, back to number 2 in the world. He's back in the world's top 2 for the first time since April 2021. There's only one more spot left for him to climb, and that is to get back to the top of the world rankings. But will MVG be the next PDC world number 1? What do you reckon?
I think there's a very, very good chance of that for a couple of reasons. One, as things currently stand, there's really only 2 people that anytime imminently could knock Michael Smith off that top perch. One of them, the world number 2, Michael van Gerwen, and the other, the number 3, Peter Wright. But on current form, it does not seem that likely that Peter Wright will do that. He's not playing all that well. At least he's not playing consistently. There's been some moments over the last month and a half where I wouldn't say it looks like he's getting back to his best, but showing that he's at least the poor form has bottomed out, and now we're starting to see some recovery. But it would take a lot of improvement to see him getting to that position where you would think he would contend for a major title sometime this summer. But those are the 2 that right now are in that range. Gerwyn Price is a world championship adrift, basically, and there's not going to be a world championship until the world championship, which means if he is going to become number 1, I'll get to him in more detail in a second, it won't be before the new year. So that leaves MVG and Peter Wright. That said, Peter Wright could do it. Like, if he finds his form in the next 2 months and he wins the world match play, he's probably going to be the world number 1 again, because it's £200,000 to whoever wins the world match play this year, £100,000 to the runner up. And okay, if he beats Michael Smith in the final, Michael Smith would probably remain number 1. But otherwise, that means it's a straight shootout between 3 people for that world number 1 come Blackpool. But Michael van Gerwen is playing much better than Peter Wright. And Michael van Gerwen's playing at least as good, if not better, than anyone else in the world other than Gerwyn Price right now. So it does seem that he will have that first crack, at least, at knocking Michael Smith off the perch of number 1. But he's defending a lot of money in the back end of the year. And if you look at how things currently go for the World Championship, he's nearly £200,000 behind Michael Smith for the provisional world number 1 at Alexandra Palace in December. If Michael van Gerwen is going to do it this year, it will be better for him to do it sooner rather than later. The world match play is that best opportunity. Otherwise, it's going to be at the World Championships where he'll have to do it. Gerwyn Price has a lot more work to do. He is, as I said, playing the best of anyone in the world right now, and I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. I really think Gezi has found his best game and is ready to keep it at that level for as long as, well, people let him. And I think, Gezi is so much better than he was 2 years ago when he was world champion, world number 1. But there's £700,000 for him to make up to be world number 1 for the world championships, because he's defending money at the Grand Slam, which means if he's going to become world number 1, he's going to have to win the world championships. He's probably going to have to win at least 1, probably 2 other majors, and hope that Michael Smith and Michael van Gerwen don't get enough in the other events to deny him becoming world number 1. That said, Gezi's not defending all that much next year. There's a lot that Gezi would have to do, while Michael van Gerwen will have plenty of opportunities before Gezi has had enough opportunities to close that gap. So the answer is, I think it has to be yes. MVG is likely to be the next number 1, or the most likely person to be the next number 1, just because of how much the player who's playing the best has to do to catch him before that. But that said, this does not mean Michael Smith is going to relinquish world number 1 anytime soon. Michael Smith could win the world match play. Michael Smith could win a couple other majors this year, and suddenly that gap is too big for MVG to close, even if he wins the world title. But the question is he likely to be the next number 1? And the answer has to be yes.
You mentioned about Gerwyn Price and the form that he's on, and I think it is fair to say that if he carries on the way he's going, he will get back to that world number one spot. Maybe not the next person, and that is what the question is: who is going to be the next world number one? Michael Smith currently occupying that top spot. Michael van Gerwen one spot behind, and it's worth mentioning as well the gap between second and third is less than £3,000. So never mind getting back to world number one, we could see Peter Wright and Michael van Gerwen swap places a few times over the next few months leading into the world match play. But yeah, I think longer term on that world number one spot, we are looking at Michael van Gerwen as the man really that could do it over the next 5 to 6 months. And you mentioned it about the world match play. There's a lot of money on the line there. Michael is the defending champion in that event. He's won it plenty of times before. And there's a lot of other events coming up between now and the World Championship. So I think if you are looking at someone, you're going to be looking at Michael van Gerwen. You talk about the likes of Gerwin, Price, Luke Humphries, Danny Noppert. For them to be the next person, they are going to have to win a lot of these titles, and the World Championship as well, probably win that to be in the conversation. But before then, I think that the battle really is between the two Michaels. It is between Smith and van Gerwen, and the gap going into the World Championships, you mentioned it provisionally, it's around the £200,000 mark, which does seem a lot, but it's not insurmountable, because if Michael van Gerwen can go on a tear, win 2 or 3 majors, then it's possible. And the caveat to that is, what does Michael Smith do in those events? If he's going deep as well, if he's winning majors, getting to finals, semi-finals, then that gap, it's not going to be eaten into it as much. So I think for MVG to get that number one spot back before the World Championship, it is out of his hands to some respect. But going into the World Championships, you'd think it is going to be in his hands. Winning the World Championships, that's not only going to see him become a 4-time world champion and get back the biggest title there is, but it would get him back to the top of the world rankings. And I mentioned April 2021, the date that MVG dropped out of the top 2. Well, he dropped off that top spot January 2021 to Gerwin Price. So it's been nearly 2.5 years now since MVG has been at the top, and to think he was number one for 7 straight years, it's been a long time. And we saw Michael rebuild last year, win major titles again, but at the same time last year we saw the crowning of Michael Smith from a prospect to a major winner and then a world champion, and that stopped Michael van Gerwen getting that world championship and a number one spot. Those 2 accolades, they are with Michael Smith at the moment, and I think they are 2 titles that he's got at the moment that he's not going to want to relinquish pretty quickly. So it's going to be interesting to see how these next few months play out, because both players we've seen, they are winning titles this year on the Euro Tour. They're both contesting for some big honours. The Premier League that's going on, it's not a ranking event, of course, but yeah, I think over these next few months it's going to be an interesting battle. And I think it's wise to say, if you are going to back someone to replace Michael Smith at the top, Michael van Gerwen is the man to do it.